Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. Here we are. Man, oh man. I'm early, so like you can see things are not quite set up if you notice. I'm all in shadow. So let me turn on my ring light here. And there we go. Come on. Is that there we yeah, come on. And there we go. Now I look a lot better. I can even turn on my other light here. There we go. Now I look all better. Thank you. I know people are always like, oh, what defines the beginning of a Preston stream when things aren't quite together? Happy Memorial Day. It's kind of a weird holiday in America, and it's kind of weird that we say Happy Memorial Day. Memorial Day is our holiday to remember dead veterans. We have Veterans Day already, but that's for living veterans, and then we have a different holiday for dead veterans. Not to mention anything to celebrate various wars. In case you don't know, Americans, we have 11 national holidays that are recognized by the federal government. New Year's Day, President's Day. No, I'm sorry. New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day. And then we have a drought for a while. And then now we have Memorial Day. Then we get Juneteenth, which is a new one under Biden. The 4th of July, our Independence Day, followed by Labor Day. And then Columbus Day. And what's next? Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. These things. Where's Bookborn collab? It's in the works. It's in the works. Why are people harassing me? Why are harassing me about these sorts of things? I hope it's a good weekend. It is. God's Eye. Where there's an abundance of werewoods at one point. And here's the thing, Cash the Quick. And now we're going to talk about God's Eye. Yes, it's not gods with the apostrophe. And it's not gods with the apostrophe before the S. It's not gods with the apostrophe after the S. God's Eye is Godsi. No apostrophes. And we don't really think about it. Like I'd say on the first several reads of Ice and Fire, I didn't think about the importance of God's Eye. You just kind of think God's Eye. That's fine. That's something totally someone would name something, but not really. When you it's called God's Eye because a God can see it fully. So here's the thing. So we think when readers look at God's Eye, we kind of look at it this way and go, oh, it's a lake. There's like an island in the middle. It looks like the whites of an eye and a pupil or an iris, right? But why would anyone on the ground be thinking about that, right? And why would anybody on the ground be thinking about like what it looks like? We do have the case of like the Nazca Indians in Peru who did create artwork on the ground that they could never observe themselves, with the idea that higher powers could look down upon it and see the images. It's very unusual that these exist. But Nazca, Peru, I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating that they did this, right? This is Nazca, Peru. They created these. This is around 1000 AD. They created these designs, thinking that like the gods above would look down and see these designs and enjoy them. The people on the ground, putting in all the work, get zero enjoyment from looking at from it. All right, they can't tell that those designs are there. So yeah, it's a possibility that that they would be thinking about what the divine would see up in the sky looking down. But a rarity, like the Nazca people are kind of unique in that sense. So, but at the same time, like say it did look like an eye, okay, to a god looking down. That's not a god's eye, right? Like this is a spider. It's not a god, like the god can see, or an ant or whatever. The god can see the design, but it's not that itself, right? So this eye, it only looks like an eye to a god, but that doesn't describe God's eye, right? It would describe an eye to the perspective of a god. That's not God's eye. Now you could say, okay, maybe Mother Earth or something is an eye, or it's a really big god. It's a really big eye, and gods are really big, so maybe it's a god's eye. But there's no possessive, right? Plus, if it were a god's eye, it should be possessive singular. A god, like God apostrophe S, God's eye. But it's not. Now, we all kind of have some history about the island, and we kind of know that there's a bunch of weirwoods there. So we could kind of say, and this is important because when we talk about like God's eye, these are polytheists. There's no R'hllor here or anything like that. New gods, old gods, they're polytheists. They believe in many gods. And so we know that there's lots of weirwood trees on the island. So if it's their eye, the god's eye, it should be, again, possessive, right? God's apostrophe eye, right? And so that's all, but so again, the apostrophe's gone. So that's kind of weird. So what's going on? Well, and this idea was brought to me by one of my editors was thinking about this and sent me a bunch of information on it. So thank you, Alex. But he was mentioning that there's only one other example in George's writing that might linguistically compare to God's eye. And that is Tall Trees Town. Tall Trees Town has no possessive aspect to it, right? It's not Tall Trees Town. It's Tall Trees Town. It's a town of tall trees. So this idea is that this is an eye of gods. And yeah, so they somehow recognize that this looked like an eye, so it's an eye of gods, like Tall Trees Town is a town of tall trees. Tall Trees Town. No possessive apostrophes. But that means they all kind of sat around and looked like it like an eye. So he had this other idea that maybe linguistically in Old English, eye was kind of just meant island. The linguistic idea of island comes from island, isle. Like I is actually, they're trying to say isle. So it's the god's isle, the isle of gods. There's a bunch of weirwoods there, and therefore it's an isle. But then again, George R. R. Martin doesn't do that much linguistically. Like it's occasional. He sprinkles it, but he's not huge into it. He's no Tolkien, okay, with regards to like thinking about linguistics. So maybe it's the Isle of the Gods, but it's it's a very odd thing, because there's it's something kind of worth like think about. Like the people sitting on the ground probably weren't thinking about it like an eye. Like like us thinking about it like an eye, looking at the map, is something we would do. But people in the story wouldn't think about it like an eye, because they're not the Nazca Indians, okay? Like they're not doing that. But it might be an isle of the gods. But it's interesting to think about it in the sense of like there's no possessive. Like it's not owned by the gods. It's not supposed to be the eye of a god. It's an isle or maybe an eye if they're really looking at it from above, that has a bunch of trees on it, therefore gods. Thus God's eye. It's a weird thing. I put way too much thought in it. It's also that the term predates any of the maps for Westeros. So George R. R. Martin like came up with it and put it in the story before he even like thought that God's eye should look like an eye on the map. Oh, on your Cole video, I think it's because he's the last guy to talk to Aegon before he becomes king and crowns him. So this is getting into like the retcon of Kristen Cole being the kingmaker. And look, I understand that looking at the story and when George was writing Princess and the Queen, there's a vague idea that, yeah, Kristen Cole is the kingmaker. I need to preserve in some respect that he influenced the decision. And so he included this paragraph and claimed that like, oh, the only thing that convinced Aegon was Kristen Cole, and then made Kristen Cole the crown placer. But when you step back realistically, no, Aegon would have totally been convinced by Otto and his mother. Like, why would Kristen Cole, of all people, be the person that like convinced him? Like, obviously, Otto or his mother, Alicent, would have pushed him over. So it's kind of ridiculous to think about Kristen Cole as the proper kingmaker there. And so like the little morsel that George is throwing at us in Fire and Blood is really insufficient, especially considering that Kristen Cole is being compared to Arianne in the Queenmaker chapter and Barristan in the Kingbreaker chapter. You know, these people are clearly thinking about being sole individuals orchestrating regime change. If Arianne did not exist, if Arianne decided not to queen make, it wouldn't happen. If Barristan decided not to king break, it would not have happened. They were the primary people bringing in everything together. It's not like Darkstar and Aerys Oakheart would have done it anyway. You know, it's not like Silva Santigar and Dre and Garrett would have been like, yeah, let's do it anyway. It wasn't a movement that was already in the making for 25 fucking years, right? Which is Fire and Blood, right? Like Princess and the Queen, Rogue Prince. Like it's a conspiracy 25 years in the making, clearly, right? And the same with Barristan. Like if it's not Barristan, it's not like, you know, anybody else is going up there to overthrow Hisdar. Skahaz isn't overthrowing Hisdar without Barristan, right? So it's ridiculous to have that pair. Like my biggest problem with Fire and Blood is not like the technical aspect. If you go, well, technically, maybe, you know, Kristen Cole historically could still be considered the kingmaker. Like in that sense, it's the fact that you've thematically shattered the parallels of the Queenmaker and Kingbreaker chapters. They are no longer like have any relation to like the primary influence of Kristen Cole. Like once you've reduced Kristen Cole's influence to being this like random, oh, he had a conversation with Aegon that maybe convinced him. Like it's bullshit. And Grant, like, and obviously George is able to do whatever he wants with the canon. Fine, he can retcon stuff, but it seems weird. It seems weird when you're taking something like Fire and Blood, which is just like a slap together shit, and you like have it trump really brilliant fucking work like A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. That's what fucking gets me, right? Like A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons are really fucking great works. Like they're really emotionally powerful, and those chapters are incredible chapters. I fucking love the King, like especially the King. I think the Kingbreaker is a beautiful fucking incredible like read. And the fact that it's just like it's thrown away for some fucking Fire and Blood Princess and the Queen bullshit. Like, it's just, that's what gets me, you know? Like, you're retconning something really good for something that's like to make way for something that's kind of shitty. That's I don't know if I'm being very hard on Fire and Blood. I should be. Fire and Blood sucks, man. I'm sorry. The fanfic chapter calls I've become a great cure for my writer's block and have helped me find the drive to write my own series. Thanks for putting this all together and everyone and making this cool thing happen. Thank you, God King Rice. Sometimes I feel really guilty about like making people write because a lot like, you know, I get a lot of submissions and there's so many great ideas in each of them and people put in so much work. And I feel really guilty that like people put in this work because not everything makes it into the fanfic, you know, not every idea, not every sentence, obviously, but hopefully in the sense of getting people back into writing and thinking about, you know, word crafting and everything like that, you know, it has some benefit in that sense, you know, but I do feel guilty. Like, oh, all these people put in all this work, but, I agree that originally Cole just crowning Aegon is better than the whole Fire and Blood explanation. Makes Cole Kingmaker feel more important title. Yes. I think we all agree. We all agree. I don't know. I was really fucking hard on it. Wait. Really? Hold on. Arya 2, A Feast for Crow? It's God's Eye? Oh, fuck. Really? Really? Because that doesn't make any sense at all. Where? I mean, it probably might depend on version of... Oh, my Feast for Crows is very bad with searching. My Feast for Crows PDF is very bad for searching. This is fucking... Oh, it's true. Oh, good find. Oh man. Let me show you guys this. Oh my god. Okay. There it is. She remembered how the pimply squire had wept when she stabbed him in the belly, and the way Sir Amory Lorch had begged when the goat had thrown him in the bear pit. She remembered the village by the God's Eye, and the way the villagers shrieked and screamed and whimpered whenever the tickler started asking her after gold. Now, singular God apostrophe S makes the least sense. So obviously I think you're right that this is a random error that like every other instance of the God's Eye, it's no apostrophe. But singular God makes the least sense. Like, why would it be one God's eye? I mean, I suppose it would be one God's eye if you're thinking about the world as a God and you're looking down at the one God's eye from the sky in the Nazca Indian sense. But you know, obviously people can, in reality, George made a mistake, but like you could throw it out by saying that Arya's an idiot, you know, like she's a little girl. So, but then again, how often does she mention, is this the only instance where she talks about God's Eye? No, she talks about God's Eye many more times. And that's the only... she talks about God's Eye all through A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords with no apostrophe. She brings up God's Eye 11 times. The 12th time being with an apostrophe. How did the editor not catch this? How did the editor not catch this? Oh, so important. Yes, that was an oopsie there. I'm curious about when we get an AI song where the synths are Preston's trumpet dun 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 from Arion 3, looking at you, Carmine. I'm sure you can do that. I'm sure you can make that happen. It's weird. It's weird. I've been reading about like what AI is capable of and what it's not. Um, some people, I've read some interesting stuff that says we're actually at the peak of what AI can do. That there's really not much more. Um, and this has to do with AI is great at taking what exists and then creating a kind of um, medium of everything, which is really great at say creating fake voices. Okay, like there is, you can go on my channel. There are literally 1,000 videos of me talking. It would be very easy to take AI and simulate my voice to say anything you wanted, that, or you want to take ScarJo's voice, do whatever you want. That's easy, but there's no ability for it to create like new stuff outside of what kind of already exists. So you kind of have these diminishing returns, like unless there's some sort of new revolution on what computers can do with creativity. You already have like this internet mass, and from that internet mass you can get this kind of shitty band of output. Okay, great. So how are you going to improve that band of output? Well, you need more internet, right? Well, how much more internet are we going to get? Let's say the internet doubles, like, every few years in the amount of mass. Well, then you're going to get like a quality improvement of approximation or whatever it seems to be doing. But you're not, but then if more AI shit happens and the internet is just putting people out of work because you can just AI that stuff, then all of a sudden you're not getting any new material. It's just more AI junk. And AI junk is feeding into AI junk until it's just a broken mass of crap. I mean, people mention that like Google is broken. I never thought it would happen. But everybody's like, well, man, like Google was getting better and better. And now Google is, honestly, when I Google something, I have to go to like the third page before I get anything that's not an ad or somebody phishing for my Google thing to pull me into the website. I mean, AI seems to actually be getting worse, which is kind of a weird thing. Yeah. What would be in Chairman Jacob's Little Red Book? What he's referring to is Chairman Mao had a little red book of political ideas and poetry and things like this. That for those that actually like study poetry and whatever, it was pretty. People talk about it being slightly below average when it comes to quality. No one's saying like Chairman Mao had any sort of beautiful ideas. I don't know. I mean, I've got some of my own writing. Hopefully that'll be out soon, but it's nothing that I would force upon a billion people, or anything like that. But I think my political ideas. It's funny though when because some people are like, oh man, like Preston's political takes are way out there, and I'm like, I don't understand how. Like I have very grounded like political takes. My political takes are essentially like you can look at the world and go, okay, what countries seem to be running really well? And Denmark, Sweden, Norway. Let's look at those countries and see what we can emulate from those. Like that's essentially my political takes. That from observation, I see certain systems working very well and that we should emulate those. There's nothing really like, I don't really have any crazy, I don't believe I have any, I'm sure if you're a right winger, you see my liberal beliefs as like crazy, but like, it seems very rational to me. Well, meanwhile, if you take the other view and say like, oh, say you're a communist or a libertarian or something like that, what political system on earth are you looking to emulate? And I just don't know. I just don't know like what people look for, like what are you hoping to achieve in your like libertarian gun utopia? Please point to me a place where this functioned effectively. Because I can clearly just point to Denmark, because I think you're overthinking it a bit. The old gods carved the earth and made the lake in the shape of an eye. Old gods are the earth itself. But the old gods are the trees. I mean, I understand that there's like you could say that the children of the forest are the songs of children who sang the songs of earth and things like that. But that's not what it is. Like the old gods are the trees. Like it's very clearly the trees. Yes, you tell green seers that they can move beyond the trees and into the rocks and all of this, but to the average person, like, no, they believed the old gods were the trees. The trees are the old gods. It's not like it's not like Gaia where we kind of like Mother Earth, where we think of the earth of itself as one great large god. Like that's not what they believed. They believed that the trees were the gods, and they drew faces, specifically faces in the trees to be the faces of God. I mean, I get it. Like you're like, you want to make it fit, but that's just not what's in the story. Like in the story, they're very fucking clear about the trees being the fucking gods, like, and not the dirt. Like people are not getting married in front of earth. They're not getting married in front of ground. They're coming before the gods. They're coming before the tree. The god is the tree. I'm gonna get, it's like you want to make it fit. I get it, but it's yeah. That's true. That no way they even thought about it looking like an eye. Like it's probably not. I mean, the Nazca people, I guess, figured it out, but God's Eye Magellan, you can't ever get near it. I'm trying to. That's the other thing is, can you even see? I don't even know. Is it established if you can even see the Isle? I imagine you could barely see the Isle on the other, like, but from the coast, you should be able to see the island. I think it's tough because we don't know how big Westeros is and stuff like that. But I think you can probably see the island from the coast. I mean, this is the other thing is like dragon riders. Where was it from? Was it named from a time of dragons where they're on a dragon back, looking down and going, "Oh, that looks like an eye. Oh, maybe that's it." That's a big the significance of every tree getting a face. The answer to this is actually pretty. There's a lot of levels to this. So, George R. R. Martin has a story called Sandkings, and Sandkings is a huge fucking influence on Ice and Fire. It's a huge fucking influence on everything George R. R. Martin has written since. And it gets down to this like idea of what George R. R. Martin thinks the function of religion is for society. So the story of Sandkings is about this guy, Simon Kress, buying some, for the most part, telepathic ants that battle. And it's really fun because you can invite your friends over, and then you can make bets on which ants like will win your battles, and you can all watch and have a good time or something like that. And so he buys these ants, and they all he projects his face, like an image of his face, into the aquarium. And they all decide to build castles where they're, in the story they call it the maw, but essentially underneath the earth, the telepathic like leader is, which starts making you think of Bloodraven being under the earth, right? But under the ground is like the telepathic slug leader. Not too different from that episode of Star Trek. You remember the episode of Star Trek where the I think it's called Conspiracy, where there's like the one major like thing, and then all the little bugs like go out and possess it. Anyway, there's one large like queen that's underneath the castle, and on the castles, all of the ants have put faces. And they think of Simon Kress as their god because he provides them the first food and guidance and everything. And then he starts abusing them in order to like make their battles more interesting. And so they start portraying his face weird, twisted ways. And it's interesting because like in the story, it's very clear that George R. Martin is talking about like one colony of ants representing the third world, one colony of ants representing the Soviet Union, one colony of ants representing China, and one colony of ants representing Western society. And so, and it's because of how they start like behaving in the story and stuff like this. And his big criticism of Western society in the story is that they start really, they become kind of hyper religious and grow way large and start crowding out all the other ant colonies and stuff like that, and become kind of weird and zealotry, and start trying to use, rather than worshiping God, they start using Simon Kress and start controlling Simon Kress to do their bidding. Which is what he's saying about Western society, is that like rather than worshiping God, Western society uses religion to control and dominate in the story. And in the end, he has to destroy them all, and the third world society is the one that ends up winning in the end or whatever. But But the point of all of that is that he used these faces as this creepy kind of thing, that the face represents, I don't know, like in that idea that like God created man in his image kind of idea, that like God looks like man, and our representation of like God like looks like man and stuff like that. I don't think George was as precise with his ideas as he was in Sandkings, but you get elements of it. Like when they go north of the wall into the savage lands of the wildlings, the faces on the weirwoods start looking more savage and things like that, versus what was in the north. But so I think George is making some sort of thematic message about faces representing like humanity and God, and it's remaking itself or something. I don't think it's necessarily clear. In a practical sense, though, it seems like carving the face in the weirwood allows a green seer to actually see through it. That it makes it easier for the green seer, say a Bran or a Bloodraven, to project himself into the weirwood. I think it makes it easier. And you might say, like, well, I don't understand. Why would that make it easier? Like, all you're doing is carving a face. Why would that help somebody telepathically project into the tree? And I don't know, other than the fact that if the tree looks a little bit more like a person, maybe that jump is easier to the telepath or something. You know, like, that's the only thing I can come up with. That to the telepath, oh, that kind of looks like a person. I guess it's easier for me to warg into it, you know? And so if you can convince all of your followers to put a face in all of the trees, then the green seer can see more and has more power because all the trees have eyes, you know? So I think in a practical sense, that's it, that it's allowing the green seer to see, and therefore let's convince all of the people to put faces into it. I think in a thematic sense, George is making some sort of statement about humanity seeing themselves in God and remaking God in their image, something like that, based on like themes in Sandkings. Anyway, that's what do you think of Alt Shift X's real job now video? Oh, I didn't know about this. Let me see here. He has a real, does he have a, yeah, I don't see this real job. Is it on his Swifty channel? Let's see here. I mean, I don't see what I don't see this video. But real, or is it a misprint like real Jon Snow video? But I haven't watched the video, but I imagine it's if this is a misprint from like not real job now, but like Alt Shift X got a real job, or his video making is his real job now. If it's real Jon Snow, then I haven't watched the video, but I imagine it's comparing differences between Jon Snow in the book and the show. And I would say that the big differences between Jon Snow in the book and show is that Jon Snow is in the book more sympathetic. And I mean both sympathetic in the sense that we as readers can relate to him, but he's more sympathetic in that he connects to people and thinks about them as human beings more than show Jon Snow, who's kind of it's hard to know what's going on in show Jon Snow's head. Jon Snow in the book is a very caring individual that thinks about other individuals a lot. And, you know, I guess in Game of Thrones, he's supposed to be super observant, and he's also ugly and things like that. He's not good looking. He's homely but I haven't seen Alt Shift X's video on it, so I don't know what else he says about it. House Peasberry versus Beesberry, who wins? House Peasberry is a very small house, right? They are this is like House Beesberry. Okay, it is a pretty major house, despite being a vassal to the Highgardens, who are a vassal to the Tyrells. Like, we hear about House Beesberry quite a bit and all, and their nobles like show up in the story over and over and over again. So we assume House Peasberry quite large. House Peasberry, we only have one reference to. Is that it? Like, oh, a Lord Peasberry. A Lord Peasberry goes north with Stannis, and that's it, and is burned by the Queen's men at the Crosted Village for cannibalism. Now, as like badass as cannibalism may seem, I don't think cannibalism like actually helps you in war. Cannibals tend to be on the losing side of most wars historically, until the practice was wiped out. So I don't think I don't think the Peasberries have anything going for them. They're just a small house who were so desperate that they followed Stannis and practiced cannibalism and then were killed. So Peasberry is totally crushing them. They're crushing them in a fight. God's Eye could be named for the green men, who could see the eye from an aerial perspective if they could see beyond the weirwood. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah. I mean, or, if they're able to, like, say they do the same thing as Vermeer Sixskins. Like, Vermeer Sixskins is probably the best example we have of somebody kind of moving beyond their body, warging and existing in open air as a very powerful telepath. So this idea is that, so you're in the weirwood, and then you kind of close your eyes and you can try to exist above the land and look down upon it. And that maybe you'd be able to see it as an eye, and they'd call it the God's Eye. Yeah, that could work. I mean, I originally thought that maybe it was just the dragons, but I suppose you're right that if someone were if someone were going beyond their body and floating in the air above the island, that maybe they could see it as an eye and perceive it as an eye. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, actually. Spy Report said that everyone starts calling Cole the Kingmaker next season. Because he placed the crown on his head. I mean, like, Cole did even less in the show than he did in the book, in Fire and Blood, in Princess and the Queen. He did even less. Because he didn't even have the conversation. He didn't even have the sitting down with him and being like, if you don't declare, then for some reason you're a threat to Jace, like, getting on the throne. I mean, the logic on it is not great. It's not great. What's put in Fire and Blood. Qyburn reminds Cersei of someone, but can't say who. My guess is Littlefinger. I think they are blood relations for some reason. Huh. Qyburn and Littlefinger. I'm forgetting. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm not sure. If this comes up. Thick of the Waste. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is or what Qyburn's saying. I'm not finding it. But Yeah, I'm not sure when Qyburn reminds Cersei of someone, or what it's about. Um, but could Qyburn be a blood relation to Littlefinger? I suppose we know nothing. We know very little about Qyburn. We know nothing about Qyburn's backstory, and other than the fact that he was at the Citadel and knew Marwyn, that's about it. And he somehow got with the brave companions. As for Littlefinger, we know he's Braavosi, and that's about it. So who knows? You could put it in there, but we have no idea where they could be. Where they could be. Um, Maybe it's referred to as God's Eye, as in a place where the gods can see, also known as the Weirwoods. It is the eye of the gods, thanks to the tree's network. Yes, that all makes sense. I would just say that the apostrophe is off, right? That like if it's the eye that they can see through, then the gods should be GODS apostrophe. But you are right. Like there's a lot of things where it's eye, right? It looks like an eye from above. The Weirwoods can see, therefore, they can see into things. So there's an eye. And then there's the idea that it could be island. That I is some sort of shorthand for island, like isle or something like that. So there's three. I would say there's three ideas on what I comes from with gods. Gods obviously either refers to them being weirwoods or the look of a giant god on the ground or something. I'd say those two things. But so there's a lot of Arya forgets how to pluralize a plot point. Yes, yes. Um, oh, forget about gods versus gods. In 2024, plural possessive is broken. You don't hang out with enough dumb people to realize no one does it currently. Yeah, I mean, for a while, so this is how old I am. This is like back in back in the days of like when texting was kind of new. Um, I would say people of like 10 years younger than me stopped capitalizing and punctuating anything because it was just too hard when texting. They're like, I'm just, when and now with like autocorrect and stuff like that, it auto capitalizes and does things like that. But for a while, there was this whole movement of everything being lowercase, which annoyed me because just in the same way, we all kind of understand that like writing in all caps is annoying, but no one really gets into like why writing in caps is all annoying. And it's, some people are like, oh, it's like shouting. No, it's not actually that. It's the fact that like when you read, I'm just gonna, I mean, real quick, like when you bring up like a random word. Okay, how about this? I'm just bringing up a random word. Okay. So when you bring up, this is just a random word, shut. Okay. But when you read a random word, without even paying attention to it, you're paying attention to things like letter height, the shape of the word. Your brain is not actually sitting there going shut, shut. It's taking in the whole word, or at least the whole consonant as a full thing and processing it. So something like this, the shape of the word is very important for your brain. And so capitals removes all of that. You all of a sudden can't process the shape of the word to help you understand. You have to take it as letter by letter, which is really annoying. The thing is like when people write lowercase, I fucking like say you have your friend, say you're hanging out with your friend you know, Charles. Okay. Any freaking, oh, see it actually auto corrected it when I which is like brilliant. But say you're hanging out with your friend Charles, right? There was this like time period, oh god, in like the early 2000s where like people are just like, oh, I'm just gonna put in my name, Charles. But the thing is, there's something off about it, right? Like, it doesn't have a capital C, so your brain's not processing it as a name. Like you're not like, and it's all of a sudden it's annoying and off. Like now I have to read it letter by letter and interpret it as what it is, because this is foreign shape-wise to your brain. There is no word that's Charles, that looks like this, right? So this is a big thing. Like I hated that period of time. Luckily, autocorrect like fixed everything. And so now like things capitalize again. But man, for a while, it was brutal. These people that weren't capitalizing or punctuating, it was just like, what are you fucking doing, you lazy motherfuckers? And the thing is, it wasn't just the text. They still do it on their computers too. And you're like, you fucking assholes. It's just fucking shift key. Is it that goddamn hard? Is shift key that hard? Any chance Balon Swan could kill Ned Dane on his return to Dorne, confusing him for Darkstar? So I never bought the Ned Dane is Darkstar theory. So before we get into this, so many people think that, because of the 5-year gap, that Ned Dane was going to be older and therefore important. And so when Darkstar comes in as a Dane, that role was originally for Ned, but because Ned wasn't the right age, it was given to Dark. A new character was created, thus Darkstar. I did not buy it. I do not buy it. Now, granted, Ned Dane, I think if you go, I'm trying to look of appendix, and this is all based on like appendices stuff, right? So start off on Ned, because I mean Ned Dane's fascinating, but again, I don't think George R. R. Martin has even figured it out. I don't think. I think it's like a. Sometimes I joke about the J.J. Abrams mystery box, where he creates a mystery, but he actually has no idea what's in the box, and then it comes time to let us know what's in the box, and he doesn't have any good ideas. So here it is. As far back as a Game of Thrones, Edric Dane was in the appendix. Pretty significant, right? That all the way back in a Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin thought that Ned Dane was an important character. Important enough to include in there as the Lord of Starfall. Impressive, considering that like all the rest, I mean, this is all that George has come up with Dorne, okay? He's got Doran Numeros Martell, Lord of Sunspear, his wife Malario, his children Arianne, Quentin, Trystane, his siblings Princess Elia, Prince Rhaenys, Prince Aegon, his brother Prince Oberyn, the Red Viper, his household Ariohota, Maester Calliote, his knights and lords bannermen Edric Dane. That's it. Principal houses sworn to him: Jourdain, Santigar, Illyrian, Toland, Ironwood, Weil, Fowler, Dane. That is All George has come up with Dorne at this point. And Edric Dane, fucking Edric Dane makes the cut. Nobody else. Nobody else. No Anders Ironwood. No Lord Fowler. No Fowler twins. Sand snakes. The fucking sand snakes are not even there. Okay? Yet Edric Dane is there. Incredible, right? Incredible that from the beginning, George R. R. Martin thought Edric Dane, need to put him in there. Right from the start. Now, does that mean Edric Dane is Darkstar? Now, because some people are like, well, this doesn't square. How is it that George R. R. Martin, from the very beginning, thought that Edric Dane was going to be a massively important character? And then he makes a fucking cameo in A Storm of Swords to let everybody know that like Wyla was a wet nurse, okay? And then proceeds to immediately vanish from the story. So some people are like, well, this just doesn't square. Like, Edric Dane must have been important, and so we're going to take the one other fucking Dane in the story, Darkstar, and claim that Darkstar must have been Edric Dane. Now, all of this doesn't, like... Now, I don't buy it because, like, one, like, Edric Dane and Darkstar have personalities that are nothing alike in any way whatsoever. And Edric Dane has an entire, like, story with the Brotherhood Without Banners. And it has, like, absolutely no similarities to Darkstar in any respect, other than the fact that they both have the surname Dane. But also, like, and people are like, well, why is Edric Dane, like, right there in a Game of Thrones? Like, what's so important about Edric Dane? And it's like, who fucking knows? George R. R. Martin changes his mind all the goddamn time. I think we're all, like, anybody that's been watching my going through a Game of Thrones, like, series finds that, like, George retcons fucking everything. Like, he didn't know that there were going to be Weirwood south of the Neck. You know, he thought that it was going to be a class struggle story. George, like, Jon was a super observant character. That was his primary thing. It just, the number of retcons is insane. Who killed Jon Arryn? So anyway, back to the actual, like, question at hand. Could Balon Swan kill Ned Dane, confusing him for Darkstar? I mean, different ages, different heights. We have no evidence that Ned Dane is in Dorne. It doesn't sound like he's in Dorne. According to the appendix for A Feast for Crows, he's hanging out with Greenbeard and who we hear about the Brotherhood Without Banners being in the Neck. We hear about a swampy Meg. So if anything, Ned Dane is in the Neck rather than Dorne. I don't think Balon Swan will be running into Ned Dane in any respect. I think Ned Dane is, from what evidence we have, and it's not much evidence. I mean, obviously it's not impossible, but if we're basing the only evidence we have is the appendix of A Feast for Crows on where Ned Dane is, he's in the Neck, hanging with Swampy Meg. That's all I got, Thoughts on RFK Jr.? I'm not into. Well, there's two things that don't make me like RFK Jr. One is that he, is this anti-vax, like nut. Like, come on, like, I'm not going to be anti-vaccinations. Like, if you're on the anti-vax train, you're on the wrong train. Like, you're a fucking idiot. But the other thing about, like, RFK is I just don't think third parties are a very good viable option in America. I think that they do more harm than good. Now, people have been thinking that maybe RFK is going to pull more votes for Trump than Biden, which was, the original idea is that GOP sources were funding RFK, thinking that because RFK is liberal, that he would pull votes from Biden. But now it's looking like in polls that he's actually pulling more from Trump. It's hard to even believe polls or where stuff would pull from. So I'd say that it's probably a wash, or maybe, it doesn't matter where it's going from. But generally speaking, I don't think you should be voting third party candidates in America. It's a waste of a vote. It's stupid. Vote for Biden or, the Republic. I mean, look, America, if Biden isn't reelected, America's over. And so it's so really it's just I don't really care about these other distractions. I don't know if like RFK will help or hurt Biden. I just I think his anti-vax stuff is stupid, and I'm just going to vote for Biden, and hope all of you will vote for Biden as well if you are American citizens. So, but that's about it. I don't think there's anything much to him. I mean, people, the media likes to have interesting clickbait stories, but not many people. He's not really very important. Yeah. The children tree magic manipulate the surface. Yeah, sure. I mean, tree magic might manipulate the surface. But I think generally speaking, we're just talking about like, in a regular vernacular sense, like the trees are the gods. And so I don't know if anybody would be sitting there going, oh, the ground is the god. The ground is God. The ground is earth. Like say the Greeks would with Gaia. I'm not saying it's nothing that is the idea that the gods could refer to the earth is nothing that like super contradicts the story. I just don't think there's much in there about it. But yeah. Have you ever considered when George R. R. Martin developed Westeros in the early 90s that he may have been strongly influenced by the seminal run of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing in the late 80s? I never read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. I know it's considered quite good, but I don't know. I know that George R. R. Martin was a comic book fan. He was big into X-Men specifically. So I don't know. I mean, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was still pretty niche. And keep in mind that like it was hard to find comic books. I don't know if you guys, these people with the internet and Amazon and stuff like that, and now you can have electronic comics and have everything shift and stuff like that. You forget that like the comics were really fucking hard to find. Like really hard. Like you would have to go to several shops and hope to find something like an old issue. You'd have to like talk. I mean, I'm not talking like the average Spider-Man. That would be at the bookstore, like the new Spider-Man that came out. But I'm talking, you want to find something obscure that wasn't one of the main titles that you heard about. It would be really tough. Like I remember somebody telling me about like the Dark Phoenix saga when I was young and being like, oh, how can I get that? Oh, well, how can you get it? Well, you'd have to find a comic shop and hope that maybe they would have those issues. And then they'd probably be expensive, though they did have a classic X-Men run that you could read it through classic X-Men, but it was hard. It was hard. So I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I'm not familiar with the story, so I'm not sure. Preston's engagement story with his wife. Oh, how very personal. Um, I proposed to my wife. Uh, I was about to get a tour with um going to Germany, and so I kind of knew that I needed to make a move to secure my relationship with my wife um, before before going away and things like that. So um, the I had another friend of mine, a friend of mine I made, two friends of mine that I made in Egypt. One was a Frenchman, um, another an American, and they were getting married in Saint Martin, and they're no longer married. They're actually both remarried to other people, but nonetheless, the I we were going to this wedding in St. Martin, and so I was like, oh, this is a pretty nice place. So I decided that I was going to propose to my wife there. So I took her out to a nice dinner, and she didn't even know or have any clue. But and so she was like, I don't understand why you're ordering like lobster and like escargot. Like, who cares? And then afterwards, I took her to the, took her to the beach and proposed to her. And so that was it. And then she was like, great. Now I can actually like plan for my wedding without like feeling bad that I'm planning for a wedding when I'm not like engaged. But there's not too much. There's not too much to it. But that was it. Um, the Targs and the Faith could have renamed the God's Eye. It's true. Wonder why the name stood. Who named it to begin with, I wonder. Yeah, no, and this Chris is one of the big I think it's a big kind of it's both a retcon and kind of an error. Like, what's very odd is that like when we begin a Game of Thrones, we are introduced to the world um in the north through Catelyn Tully's eyes. And Catelyn is a follower of the faith of the Seven, and she feels out of place and off in the north, despite the fact that she's been there for years, and despite the fact that her husband spent years getting raised in the Vale and things like that. And we're presented this conflict between the faith of the Seven and the religion of the old gods, and that this is going to be a clash. And they burn down all of the trees. Later in the story, we hear Lewin talk about how the Andals burned down all the trees south of the neck. No more trees south of the neck. It was a big deal. And you're supposed to think about it in the same sort of like conflict between, the Druidic people of Europe and Christianity and things like that. And then as the story goes on, and there's this dichotomy between like the first men and the Andals and all of this, right? There's this huge difference between old god first men people and the Andal faith of the Seven people. That this is going to be some big, important like split. And as the story goes on, it's a whole lot of nothing. Like, it's a whole lot of nothing. Like, it turns out that the faith of the Seven and the old gods don't have any conflict in the story. Other than like a few people in the Riverlands complaining about like wolves, and stuff like that. Like, it turns out, oh, actually, not all the weirwoods were burned down south of the neck, and in fact, there's a whole bunch of people that really like cherish their first men heritage, and they brag about it, and it's not that big a deal, and it's just like, oh, okay, I mean, there's conflicts with R'hllor and things like that, but the whole like faith of the Seven old gods like tension is dropped, which is just, I don't know, weird. Like, why bring it up? As this like main thing about Catelyn Tully and like her representing, like, I mean, she is the representative of people south of the neck and things like that, but it's just nothing. So when we talk about like maybe they renamed the God's Eye, it's possible in the sense that God's Eye is such an old term. So maybe he thought about that back when he did think about that conflict when he first made a Game of Thrones, maybe. Later that conflict was dropped, but God's Eye is very early Advent, so maybe. But that's the funny thing. Like, what would the faith call it? Why would they still call it the God's Eye? But I mean, even though they still talk about the old gods and the new gods, so they still recognize that the trees are gods in some sort of strange abstract sense. So, no seed core crash surviving alien with hundreds of eyes and trees for eyes and mouths in the story. I mean, that's essentially the Harangan explanation, right? That the old gods are actually the Harangan mines. They've landed on Westeros as the last surviving place. Created a there's a time barrier to keep the Earth Empire away so that they can kind of exist, but no, Glytus went to meet George R. R. Martin, had lunch with him, and I harassed him about asking what the Harangan mines looked like, and it never came up in conversation, so he didn't ask. So, oh well. I tried. Could the worship of face-bearing trees receive from the faithful be what gives the psychic boost for greenseers? I mean, I guess that's the idea, right? That maybe the face like seems like people, and therefore like it's not as much of a leap to jump into the tree because it's got a face on it, because just like you're jumping into another human being or something like that. But then that is the question. But you're bringing up a something that's actually kind of interesting. So, in specifically the Forsaken chapter, Euron wants Aeron to worship him and to pray to him. And what is prayer? What is prayer other than telepathic talking to God, right? Like, people sit in a room and you just try to talk to God. Like, not with words. You're sitting there praying, going, right? Are not prayers, at least in Christianity. I understand that in Islam and Buddhism and prayer is different. But at least from what we know in Christianity essentially is just prayer is attempted telepathic communication with God, right? So, was Euron, who is drinking the drink of the warlocks and might have a glass candle and all these sorts of other things, like, was he trying to create the same sort of telepathic hive mind of the House of the Undying? The House of the Undying was trying to get Dany to get absorbed in, take her power in some sense, her telepathic power in some sense. Perhaps Euron was doing the same thing with Aeron. He was trying to get Aeron to open his mind to create that telepathic connection, to somehow take his power. And so are all of these worshipers of the trees, when they're praying to the trees, are they creating that same sort of telepathic connection? It's hard to say. That said, we don't have Bran experience that at all. Like he's literally in front of people. He's literally in front of his father praying to the tree, and he feels nothing. Meanwhile, when someone gets their throat cut and blood seeps into the ground, he tastes it. So, at least with the werewoods, we don't really have any evidence of it. Like it's a very interesting idea, and I understand it completely because it's kind, we see it with Danny, and perhaps we see it with Aaron, but we don't yet see it with. We don't have any evidence of it with the old gods. Was Book Damon really behind Blood and Cheese? I would say no. I mean, obviously it's ambiguous, but I would absolutely say no. And mainly because there's a timing issue. Well, one, it just doesn't seem like why would, of all of the things that happen in the story, like why is Luke's death the thing that like triggers Damon to want to try to assassinate some people? Like why wouldn't he, like, I don't know, like there's a lot of things Damon can do throughout the story. There's a lot of things that could trigger him, but why is Luke's death, like, it's not even his kid, like, but also, like, if you look at the time period, Damon is very busy with his Riverlands campaign. And so it just seems, and when you read those passages, it seems like Gildane is desperately trying to make it seem like Damon did it when there's not much evidence. And even when you like, see when you talk about like Massaria being the handler, even so, like we go to Blood and Cheese. There are these weird things where let's see. All right. So, I mean, we'll bring up this Fire and Blood here. Okay. So you just kind of feel that like it's very desperate on trying to pin it on Damon. So on Dragonstone, Queen Rhaenyra collapsed when told of Luke's death. And then he says, Damon writes, an eye for an eye, a son for a son. Lucerys shall be avenged. Like, first of all, it doesn't really fit, like an eye for an eye, son for a son. Like how are they getting all of these like messages? But nonetheless, like Aemond is the one that kills Luke. Okay. Not Aegon. So like Aegon's son for Rhaenyra's son doesn't really logically make sense. But say Daemon even wrote this, he probably just means like in war. So then next we have like, lest it not be forgotten, Daemon Targaryen was the prince of the city, blah, blah, blah. And he had friends in low places and followers amongst the gold cloaks. Like, okay, none of this really proves it. And then it's like, and then he mentions that a pale stranger is the one that puts the vengeance in motion. Now, okay, like, all of a sudden, like being pale equals Massaria. Now later he straight up says it's Massaria, but why would he say it's a pale stranger if it's Massaria? He would just say, oh yes, we know it's Massaria. So it's like there's so little information that you're supposed to question whether it was Daemon. But also the weirdness of like, who is Cheese? Why did Cheese disappear? Like, what's the entire story of Cheese? Why did he feel that he needed to like torture Helena? Like, if it's eye for an eye, why torture Helena? Things like that. Like, nothing really fits about it being Daemon. Now, I guarantee this show will make it simple, like, but you're supposed to read Fire and Blood and question whether it was Daemon. It's not like I'm the only person sitting there going, no, it totally wasn't Daemon. I think like half the readers sit there and go, oh, I don't think it was Daemon. And half the readers go, yeah, it was Daemon, you know? But like, it's supposed to be ambiguous, but it doesn't, when you actually like examine the story, like, okay, a pale stranger and what happened with Cheese? Why is he torturing Helena needlessly and forcing her to go crazy? Like, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with the justice of son for a son? Well, it doesn't, you know. So, yeah, I meant the real Jon Snow video. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it. I'll have to watch it sometime. If there's anything interesting in it. Would you rather be Boba Fett or Chewbacca? I mean, Chewbacca has a loving family and like children and everything, right? Boba Fett, Boba Fett's just kind of a lonely dude. I mean, he guess he gets his like pseudo family at the end, you know, hanging out in his city, you know, on Tatooine. It's not a bad life, I suppose, for either of them. I mean, but I guess Chewbacca seems to have more going on in his life than Boba Fett. Boba Fett's existence is a little more lonely. You know, I mean, I understand that Boba Fett's cool and all, but yeah. Maybe it's the god's brown eye. That actually the god's eyes, the god's arse, his arsehole. That is a straight up George R. R. Martin joke. It seems like something that we could put in the fanfic at some point. That actually it's his brown eye, and that like it's the god's arse. That the butt. It's not the god's eye, the god's butt. Maybe. Have you read the Jaime Lannister versus Rand fanfic that George wrote? What is this? It must be like a paragraph long if it exists. What's going on here? Oh my. Holy crap. What a... Okay. This is this is insane. It's insane that George wasted this much time. Okay. Sometime I need to like do an entire like video on this analysis or something because this is ridiculous. So, April 10th, 2010. Okay, when he should have been writing A Dance with Dragons. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's insane. The epic tournament of fantasy champions on Savudu is down to the final match. Sir Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, versus Randall Thor, the Dragon Reborn. They're fighting on the tourney grounds outside of King's Landing and on Savudu. Rand has his Heron Mark sword and just channeling ability. The one power. Jaime has a sword, a lance, a horse. And since Rand accepted this challenge to make this a trial of 7, Jaime also has some friends. Here's my version of how the fight goes down. And then it's like, oh my God. Now, look at me scrolling here, okay? do 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 boop boop ba doo boop boop ba doo boop 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 boop. What da 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 ba 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 do 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 ba da 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 da. And there we come to the end. My fucking God, I didn't realize he wrote that much. Oh my God. This story, this is insane. I had no idea he did this. This is so fucking stupid. Let me get the full fucking word count for this, okay? Just so that you Oh my God. $6,587 words. It is the length of a rather long Ice and Fire chapter. Oh my fucking God. What were you fucking doing with your time, George? Oh my God. Oh God, that's just how depressing. How absolutely depressing that he wasted it. Oh my God. Anyway, I'm going to have to do an analysis of that sometime. That's just ridiculous. That's, oh my God. Oh my God. Ugh, how depressing. A Google AI search result telling depressed people to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge is peak AI. Really? I didn't realize that this is, that I haven't heard about this, but I'm surprised they haven't Asimov lawed it, you know? Like, shouldn't you, I mean, I think ChatGPT is Asimov lawed. So there should be something, you know, there's something making it so human beings can't come to harm, or, you know, things like that. But, man. I recommend Alt Real's Real Jon Snow. It goes into Jon's political vision and dives deep into Jon's progressive policies and choices in The Night's Watch, instead of just the action star that made him into the show. Yeah, I mean, the most significant thing about Jon is Jon's analysis of why Samwell Tarly is important is a real highlight of a Game of Thrones. And, you know, it impresses Maester Aemon so much that, you know, we're not completely sure, but it seems that Maester Aemon talked to G.R. Mormont, and that's why G.R. Mormont wanted him to be a steward and things like this. That it was Maester Aemon's recommendation based on Jon Snow's assessment on why Sam Tarly is important. And so there's that aspect, and then of course then you get more into it in A Dance with Dragons when he's like looking at wildlings, and he doesn't see them as wildlings; he just sees them as people. So I mean, it's tough because it's all, you know, kind of in his head. I guess it's really sad they didn't have that aspect. Actually, Jon Snow's, that wasn't part of Game of Thrones season 1, where he needs to tell Maester Aemon why Sam Tarly is important, which is too bad. But this idea that the world needs all types of people, and people are people, and they all need protection, and being a you know, essentially doing away with nationalism and sectarianism and all these sorts of things. And Jon Snow's position of seeing people as people
I don't know if anybody else in the story has that. So it's I'm sure if you put Davos and Brienne's feet to the fire, they would be just as good as Jon. But it's never really brought up in the show at all, right? Like Jon just likes the wildlings because I guess it's never really explained because he likes Tormund or something, or I think maybe they just explained it as he needs more people to fight against the others or something like that. That's very far focused, but get Preston to read George R. Martin's Jamie Lannister versus Rand. I guess I'll read it. I'll read it. I've read that Russia is attempting to call an end to the war with the gains they've made across the Ukrainian border, similar to Germany-Poland 1939. So I would say the problem with Russia and their I don't disbelieve that they're putting these offers forward. The problem is that Russia is a bad faith actor. They already did this, right? This was already they already took Crimea and they already took Donbass and then said, oh, well, it stops here. It stops here. And then years later, they just go out, they go again. So with the Ukrainians at this moment, I'm not saying that Ukrainians ideas might not change if their war situation becomes more desperate. But the problem is that Russia has proven itself to be, or Putin specifically has proven himself to be not trustworthy at the bargaining table. Like saying oh, well, if they have these gains, that then will bring peace. And it's like, well, the problem is you went back on it before. And so it's, in a sense, it is kind of similar to the Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia kind of situations where, you kind of believe them once. Okay, they're going to stop and it's going to be peaceful after this, and then no, it's not going to be. So I don't think you can trust Russia at the bargaining table, unfortunately. Because it's like I think we'd all like to see an end to the war in Ukraine, but I think that really the best end to the war in Ukraine is for Russia to get out of all of the territory, Donbass, Crimea, all of it, and go back to Russia. That's the way the war ends. And Russia saying, sorry, our bad, will completely retreat from all Ukrainian territory. I mean, that's the way the war is going to end. Russia's just not believable. They're just not believable at the bargaining table. Like, what are you going to do? Like, would you trust? Like, honestly, would you trust Russia? Like, would you? Like if you had a country and you're looking at Russia's actions over the past 15 years, would you trust them to stop, or would you know that they would just arm again and then invade again when the time came? If I were running Ukraine, I wouldn't trust Russia. The only thing, the thing that seems to work, Russia just get out of Ukraine. That just seems like a pretty easy way to peace, is for them to get out of everything. Get out of Crimea, get out of Donbass, everything. Go back home. I'm sure they're trying. I'm sure they're trying all sorts of things. But, Jesus, I think it's been half a million Russians have died. It's insane. Hello.
Real quick, I actually was not planning on joining until you gave this fanfic Jamie versus Rand thing some thought. I was looking into it. Did you know he also wrote a fanfic about Jamie fighting Cthulhu?
Fucking George.
And apparently, from what people are telling me here, at some point, Melisandre unleashes a shadow baby against Rand,
Oh, really?
and apparently it was made by using Tyrion's essence / sperm. Because apparently there's a one line where Tyrion goes, "There goes my son, yet I barely feel anything." You got to do something. You can't not do something on this. You have to.
All right,
And please,
I'll take a look at it.
and please mention how George is vehemently against fanfics. That should be like the first 15 minutes about how much he hates it.
No, well, he's very specific about it, and I run into people like misunderstanding what George said like many times. Like, George is against fanfic because he thinks that it will cost him money. It's very specific. You could look it up on YouTube. So that's why he's fine with fan art, because it doesn't affect him. But he says that fanfic, the reason he's against it is that it's his copyright, and you're going, and if you're going to be trying to marketing it, he said, like, making money off of it, merchandising it is the problem, and therefore that affects his bottom line. And he's very specific. It's not like some abstract thing like, oh, I'm against the principle of no. It's an economic thing. You are stepping.
It's about money.
Yeah, it's about money, which is why my fanfic is all volunteer and there's no profits. And the videos
of course.
aren't
By the way,
he
did that fanfic before he was famous, where he had all the time in the world.
I mean, before he was hugely famous, yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, he Game of when did Game of Thrones premiere?
April
17th. This was April 10th. Oh, yep. April 17th, 2011. This is April 10th, 2010. You're right that he's got the successful book deal. I mean, he's got
he's been paid for the adaptation rights.
Right. HBO has gotten it, but at the same time, maybe it's going to fail, so you're right that he's not the huge guy. He's got all the time in the world, but
he's got all the time in the world. How have you been, by the way? I haven't hit you up in a couple of days.
Yeah, been okay. It's Memorial Day weekend, but
so you're off tomorrow?
Yeah, but not really, because when you have kids, the weekends is not the weekend. When people are like, "Oh, happy Friday," it's like, well, when you're a parent, it's like everything is backwards, right? You're like,
I feel so bad for you because people keep hitting me up, and people keep hitting up together. You guys should cover this. You guys should do this. I'll tell the audience right now. Someone hit me up privately, and they're like, I already told you about this. Someone hit me up privately and is like, dude, I will pay Preston so much money if you can get him to do a leftovers podcast or video.
Right.
I'm like, someone just said you guys should do a commentary on Fury Road. I'm like, I don't know. That's up to you, man. It's really all it comes down is up to you.
Well, I mean, again, it's how much time we got. When I talk about how much time I have in my week, it's to work on this channel and everything. Mm-hmm. It's literally hours I can count on my hands. There's not that many. So it's at this point in my life, it's really tough when people are like, "Oh, please do something that's going to take 40 man hours." It's like, because there's a cost to it. Every time I do, whenever I do something, there's a cost. Something else gets delayed, something else gets not done. So there's things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get another overanalyzing out. I'm trying to get the Jamie fanfic chapter ready for editors. I'd like to get back in. I'm trying to finish up editing my book. I'm trying to, it's I'd like to do another going over Game of Thrones. There's all these little things where you're I want to do that, but it's which do I prioritize?
You need a good assistant or hand of the king for you.
I know, but like at the same time, like once you get an assistant, it's like now all of a sudden, like what you're doing is not authentically yours. It's like it's not yours.
True. True.
No?
Also, have you come to the point where it's not worth doing if you're not making money on it? I know, the fanfic aside, I know for legal issues you can't, but at
Uh,
certain points, like you can't really afford to take this much time to put out a video if it's not going to be like, if you're not going to get at least some couple dollars on that.
well, here's the other thing is I don't really think about the money anymore. Like right now, it's look like it's not that the channel doesn't have nice money, but like I'm at a point in my life where I'm pretty comfortable with where I am economically, and like it's like the channel's great. I do the channel for fun. Like I even though it's very stressful, the channel's for fun, and like it's just a passion of mine. Like I have a day job. I've told this people many times. Like I'm not a starving artist. I have a day job. I'm fine. I am really fine. So a lot of times it really is just like, what do I feel like doing?
Yeah.
You know, which is very different. Like I'm not like Mr. Beast, like, you know, I mean, I'm not like Mr. Beast in a lot of ways, but I'm not like Mr. Beast. Like I'm not like, you know, looking at the algorithm being like, what's going to get me the most views? Because if I'm talking about what's going to get me the most views, I'll tell you, part 31 of Overanalyzing House of the Dragon is not fucking high on that list of things that's going to get fucking views. And the fanfic, which takes a lot of my fucking time, which is nothing. I don't earn any money on it. Like it would not be a thing. So, but it's a nice thing. It's the nice thing about not worrying about it is you get to really follow your passion and what you care about. So, you know.
So what you're saying is in the fanfic, Dany won't marry Tyrion at the end. Got it.
Dany won't marry Tyrion. Sometime, yeah. So Carmine and I were talking about the North Remembers fanfic, and we neither of us have read it, but Trey read it, and so Trey mentioned a few things to us, and one of them was like, you know, that Tyrion marries Dany.
I'm gonna be very real with you. I'm not gonna betray Trey on this, but I'm gonna be very real with you. I've known Trey for quite some time now.
Yeah.
The words he's used to describe that fanfic, I've never heard or read him use those words ever.
Ooh.
I was like, oh, fuck.
He's a very
God damn.
That's the thing. He's a very nice guy. Yeah.
Trey's a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's much nicer human being than I am, by far. By far. You talk about book themes. David and Dan said themes are for 8th grade book reports. Thoughts on that statement? Yeah, so this is what's also really weird. George R. Martin has said in interviews that he doesn't think about themes for his writing, at least not on a conscious level. Like that he says he includes it subconsciously, that he might include it subconsciously, but he doesn't think about themes on a conscious level, which all I can say is just like, you lying sack of shit. Of course you think about themes. Do you think we haven't fucking read your stuff? Like, what are you talking about? You're not thinking about themes. Like, what? Like, you know, you specifically taught, it's just, you know, like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it. Like, it's so very obviously he thinks about themes. His writing is dripping with very clear, obvious themes. For instance, like Dany losing her hair in the pyre and Arya losing her hair simultaneously. Okay. And then in A Dance with Dragons, George telling us specifically about Cersei losing her hair and what that means. Like he very specifically tells us that the hair was stripped from her to strip her of her femininity. And you're like, oh, really? Because that's interesting because Arya's hair was also cut and they started calling her boy. You know, and you're like, oh, so you're not talking about like in both of these situations when like Dany loses Drogo and Arya loses Ned and Cersei loses her sexuality. Like those aren't like them being stripped of their power. Like this isn't like, that's not the theme. I'm just imagining it. And people will be like, yes, Preston, you're imagining it. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like Danny and Arya lost their hair at the same fucking time. I'm really supposed to think that like George wasn't thinking about themes when he did that? Like, so I don't know. Carmine, do you think George R. Martin thinks about themes? Do you believe him when he says he doesn't?
It would be fucking hilarious if like he's browsing the internet and someone has this like amazing like piece on why this means this, and he's like, oh fuck, that's great. I mean, yes, that was the idea all along.
Because, well, that's the other thing is he also there was a blog called the Myronese Blot where a guy went through the Danny chapters of A Dance with Dragons, and he made some observations that they're good, fairly basic, solid observations on the story, like Skahaz is tricking Barristan, or things like this, and he definitely talks about themes in that, on like what themes are being represented like in the story. In the Slaver's Bay story. And George R. Martin said like, oh yeah, I read that blog, and it seems like, well, at least one person like gets what I'm doing. And you're like, oh, but he's talking about the themes. Like what's like, how do you not pay attention to themes? Yet now you're saying that some guy that wrote a bunch of blogs about your themes is correct. Sometimes I just don't fucking get it. I don't know. But Dan and Dave saying that like themes are for 8th grade book reports. No, like I don't know if every great writer thinks about themes. Like when Stephen King says he doesn't think about themes, I believe him. I believe that he doesn't think about themes other than what appears to be creepy and scary. Because he's writing so fast, and you read Stephen King's writing, which is great on a certain level. Stephen King's writing is incredible in the sense that it's very comprehensive, and you read it and you know exactly what it means. There's no confusion, and you can move on to the next sentence. And therefore you can read a Stephen King novel in a day because it's so easy to read. He's a fucking great writer in that sense. But if you're talking about themes, like what does it represent? It represents nothing. Does it represent the loss of innocence? No, it doesn't. Like, also there's a conversation between George R. Martin and Stephen King where like Stephen King mentioned how he didn't mention themes, and George R. Martin seemed very confused. Like, so I don't know. George R. Martin contradicts himself in stuff all the time. But no, in my opinion, great writing has themes. So Dan and Dave are idiots to say that like themes are for 8th grade book reports. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of writing? Like, you're just writing shit at this point. Like, if it's just like without theme, like that's the whole point. Weird.
It's also possible that he stumbles on a lot of this stuff. That's also possible. And maybe he's just trying to save face.
I mean, look, I admit that say 95% of all of the analysis of themes and theory building that I've done over the years is bullshit and made up and imagined. And I accept that. 95%. Fine. That still leaves like 5%. And I would still say that 5% is fucking like a lot and impressive for writing, and if that 5% were there and unimagined, I'd be like, good. That's good effort. Genius level work, That's what I'm saying. Ken Follett, he is a Welsh author who did Triple, The Key to Rebecca, Lying Down with Lions, Dangerous Fortune, World Without End, Fall of Giants, Winter of the World, Edge of Eternity. Isn't there an Asimov story called Edge of Eternity? It's weird they chose that one. I don't really know much about him. I mean, same age as George R. Martin. But the thing I actually think is on when we talk about people of similar age, I actually think it's, and I kind of, it's one of those videos that I want to do, but that would probably get 1 million clicks, but like I don't have time. But I want to do a video eventually on comparing and talking about the life of George R. R. Martin and the life of George Lucas, because the two of them actually have very similar outlook on life, and very like, and their work is very affected by Vietnam. And then they kind of, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in the sense that they created this IP, and then that's one dominating Disney Plus and the other dominating HBO, and you know, you hand it off to other people, and it gets like changed and whatever. But there's a lot of similarities between the two men, George R. R. Martin and George Lucas, just political similarities, the world they created, what they did with their careers, and their loves. But yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't know much about Ken Follett. You're getting excited about what's coming out this month, Star Wars, Carmine?
The Acolyte. We'll see. We'll see how good it is. I don't think we'll be able to enjoy it, though. I don't think we'll be able to really enjoy the new one.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, and I'll need your opinion on this, Carmine. So in a Game of Thrones, it is true that Jon is the only Stark to bring the wolf to the feast. In fact, Jon specifically says that it's one of the advantages of being a bastard, and it's part of that. And then in A Clash of Kings, I guess it would be in a Storm of Swords, right? Yeah, it's going to be in a Storm of Swords. When he meets Mance, he says that he came to the feast and he made note of Eddard's children and the wolf pups that ran at their heels. So we have a clear contradiction. Okay, there were no dire wolves at the feast, yet we're specifically told that, and yet Mance is claiming that he saw the wolf pups. Now, could it be one? Mance Rayder is lying about having attended the feast. Well, I have to say that Mance Rayder's story about going south of the wall to attend the feast is one of the dumbest things in A Storm of Swords. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that a man would travel hundreds of miles, and then not just any man, the head of an entire nation who is responsible for trying to lead like 100,000 people to safety, and if you die, all of those people might be killed by the others. Like your life is very, very important for unifying the wildlings. And the fact that he would just, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. I'm going to travel hundreds of miles, like, and spend months on the road because I wanted to get a look at Robert and, Benjen and whatever. Like, it's a ridiculous story. It's a stupid story. Now, in the fandom, there's been like some attempted repair, me included, that maybe Mance was trying to, create conflict among the powers south of the wall, and therefore, like, for instance, trying to kill Bran for, and creating that would create conflict, and that would justify his incredibly stupid trip, like leaving behind his nation of wildlings and spending months on the road. Some movement like that would be worthwhile versus just a whim. So it could be, getting back to this, it could be that Mance did do the trip, and this is just an error because George R. R. Martin fucks up. This is the same book where George R. R. Martin claimed that send a dog to kill a wolf and all sorts of things. Okay, there's a million mistakes in the text, so it could be that. Or it could be like this, he's lying. He never went south of the wall. I'm trying to think if there's anything in here that he couldn't have just made up. Like, is it possible? Like Carmine, where do you fall on this? Do you think that this is just an error, or do you think that there's a possibility that Mance is lying and he never went to the feast?
Both are possible, but I think I'm leaning more towards George. It's an error on George's part.
Up. The wall can stop an army, but not a man alone. I took a lute and a bag of silver, scaled the ice near Long Barrow, walked a few leagues south of the New Gift, and bought a horse. All in all, I made much better time than Robert, who was traveling with a ponderous great wheelhouse. So he knew about this wheelhouse. Not impossible that he'd hear about it. To keep his queen in comfort. Okay. He somehow found that information. A day south of Winterfell, I came upon him and fell in with his company. Free riders and hedge knights are always attaching themselves to royal processions in hopes of finding service with the king. No knights in the north, but okay. My lute gained me easy acceptance. He laughed. I know every bawdy song that's ever been made north and south of the wall, so there you are. The night your father feasted Robert, I sat in the back of the hall on the bench with the other free riders listening to, here we go, Orland of Old Town, play the high harp and sing of dead kings beneath the sea. I betook your lord father's meat and mead, had a look at the kingslayer and the imp, and made passing note of Eddard's children and the wolf pups that ran at his heel. Let me check out Orland.
There is one explanation that I've seen as a theory, but I would love for someone to, it's been a long time, but I would love for someone to send it to me again. The theory was that Mance was never there, but it was Benjen who's been his like secret agent the entire time, feeding him information. Benjen saw all of this and told Mance.
Right. I mean, it's true. I mean, I would say the Orland of Old Town is the very specific piece of information that seems like he would, how did he find that information out? Like when somebody who reported to him on this, and also like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of the story? Like what is Bale doing? I mean, what is Bale the Bard? What is who Mance is supposed to be here? Who is like, what is Mance doing? Like, why is he telling the story to Jon? Why would he want Jon to remember that to think that he snuck into Winterfell? Like, why is he trying to impress Jon? So like somebody telling him Orland of Old Town played the harp and sang of the dead kings beneath the sea. That's the most specific thing. Like somebody told him that information. That's really specific. I mean, I think we're supposed to read this and be like, well, Mance was there. And that was just an error of George R. R. Martin's part George R. R. Martin's part.
Or Mance needs Jon to know or to think that he's a capable person who could be anywhere and has extensive reach.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea that Benjen is in cahoots with Mance. I think that
Yeah.
would make more sense. I would like that to be the case.
It's funny though, like to rethink that whole story of Mance lying, because then it's like, hey Mance, did you see where they sat the bastard? And he's like, on the dais. like what did you like? What do you mean? Like I don't know. Where were you seated? I don't. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't on the fucking dais. What are you talking about? Like what? Like, like he fucks up. Oh man. Either he's going to give us our book in exchange for our money, or we have to turn to the fanfic. He can deal with it. Yes. But I mean, George doesn't need money either. George doesn't need the money, so I am the Mr. Beast of the A Song of Ice and Fire community. I don't know about that. I mean, there's bigger A Song of Ice and Fire fans than me. I mean, the channels than me. So, I mean, Carmine has more subscribers than me.
You should know by now, subscribers don't mean dick. Subscribers mean nothing. You may not be the biggest, but
it's all about quality. You're saying quality over quantity?
Something like that. I will say though that you may not be the biggest, but besides Alt-Shift-X, anyone bigger than you, I mean, doesn't really stick in anyone's heads. I'm not trying to be an asshole to anyone in specific, but whenever you look online of like the top 5 Ice and Fire content creators, Alt-Shift-X is the only like bigger person than you that makes those lists.
I've seen plenty of lists that purposely exclude me. They out of their way. What would you be doing if there was no Ice and Fire? It's a good question. I mean, I'll tell you that like before I did the channel, there were some things I was wasting my time on. I was writing cracked articles for a little bit, and before that I was like editing Wikipedia articles. Like there was definitely like things I needed to do with my idle time, like bored at work, like what do I do? You know, like so, you know, I might have found like some other project. Maybe I'd be writing more. I don't know. But I would have probably found something to fill my time, to have some sort of like crazy online hobby of some sort. But you know, it's been fun. I mean, I like you guys. It's great. It's great. You know? But whoa, do you hear those fireworks? Do you hear that, Carmine?
Fireworks or thunder?
You know what? It might be thunder. You're right. It's actually storming.
You're in Baltimore right now, right?
Yeah. Or
yeah, that was thunder.
Yeah, you're right. Good
thing check the weather where you are.
Good thing I did a little bunch of yard work today. Good thing I took in the yard equipment. But yeah, if you're looking for the cracked stuff, you can search under Preston Xander was my cracked alias back then. But
someone was actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. Someone was asking me about that, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, there's like 6 of them. There's like something like that, 5 or 6. I forgot how many articles. It was years ago when people read cracked. Couple of questions. Have you ever watched Ripper Street? One of my favorite TV series. A bunch of Game of Thrones actors appear. And have you read the Magician books by Raymond I. Feist? My favorite book before I discovered Game of Thrones. What's weird is when you said Magician books, I thought you were talking about the Lev Grossman series, which I've read, but no, Raymond Feist. magicians. I've not read the magician. Oh, this is the magician singular versus magicians. Or maybe it's the magician. Originally published in 82. I've not read this. The 12th year of the reign of Roderick IV, an orphan kitchen boy named Pug made apprentice magician to the magician Culgan in Crete, struggling student of magic. It's funny now to realize how many different fantasy series there are, because actually a lot of the fantasy series that exist out there are kind of fun. Like I saw that there's actually a fantasy series about like jesters, and there being like a secret society of jesters who are actually like trying to like take like rule the world like maesters and stuff like that. And there's like I'm actually like, I'm impressed how many different kind of fun fantasy like settings people have. But no, I'm sorry that I haven't but this was the big read at the time. But I have not watched Ripper Street. Isn't that rings a bell for some reason? It has it's got Braun in it. And is that the guy from Succession? Yeah. Yeah. But I haven't seen it. I'm sorry. And it has Uncle Benjamin too. Uncle Ben. I think I need to get back into like calling all of the characters by their shortened names. Like how no one really like she's called Leah in the books quite a bit, but everyone all the fans call her Lyanna instead of Leah. And Garyon, he's called Uncle Gary, but everybody calls him Garyon Lannister. Or Benjen, he's called Uncle Ben too. So so I feel like I need to get back to calling them like Leah, Ben, and Gary. I think that's the best thing to do.
You're going to confuse all the non-book readers. You're literally going to confuse every single person who loves listening to you because they never read the books. You're going to confuse the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing a video of somebody like making fun of the fact that like there was a medieval story with or something where one of the characters was named Kevin, and he's just like making fun of the fact that like the guy's name is Kevin, and everyone's like, dude, like I think it was related to Game of Thrones or something. He's like, Kevin, and then everybody's like, dude, Kevin's a character in Ice and Fire. Like you're making an ass of yourself. Like it's like that'd be ridiculous to have a character named Kevin in Ice and Fire. Yeah, no. He's there. Gary, there's no Garys. Sorry, there's a Gary. Gary and Ben. Oh, at the feast means different things. Maybe he saw the pups like beforehand, like walking around. Yeah, maybe. I'm sure that you could work it out if you wanted like save it. Like even if George fucked up, it's like it's not like you could just like make that excuse. Oh, Avalon. The God's Eye and the Isle of Faces is a homage to the Arthurian legend of yeah, it's true. I mean, Avalon in Arthurian legend is like an island. Right. mystical island featured in the Arthurian legends, where Excalibur was made. Yeah, most deaf. And what's funny is that like Avalon is his unfinished novel. I mean, it's that's like the double weird irony, right? So like George R. Martin was working on Avalon and then stopped to do Ice and Fire, and he fully accepts that he's never going to get back to Avalon. But what's funny is that like we kind of all accept that the end game of Ice and Fire is the God's Eye. The end of Ice and Fire is Avalon. So like in a sense, he's not finishing Avalon, two different Avalons, but he's not finishing Avalon twice. Oh man. The rules for apostrophes and possessives in English should not become standard until 19th century. Yeah, there's a lot of things that weirdly didn't become standardized. You know, Roman numerals were not standardized by the Romans. Like only to, you know how like we tend to think of like IV being 4. The Romans didn't give a fuck. If you wanted to do I, you know, for 4, I for 4, that's 4. If you want to do IIV for 3, yeah, that's fine. They didn't fucking standardize any of it. So it's only now that we have these like weird rules with like a numeral system that we're not even around. That's not, we don't even use anymore. But yeah. Yeah, it's true. Option 1, George misremembered. Option 2, Mance was really there. Option 3, George just intentionally wrote Mance is misremembering. It's true. It's perhaps. George does seem to have a lot of errors. He does. I mean, he does, you know, because it's a huge work. I mean, I do think that like George is better than a lot of writers and in thinking about like consistency, but there's a lot of errors in Ice and Fire. Quite, you know, hundreds and hundreds. Like people are like, oh, what are the major errors and retcons in Ice and Fire? I'm like, the list goes on and on. It would be hours and hours of me like going through them and me forgetting them and people reminding me of another one. Matt says Robert Singer is singing of Drowned Kings. Later we learn that Robert only liked body music, fun music. Is he insinuating Robert's dad was king? I mean, Drowned Kings. I'm trying to think of Let me think on that for a second. Bring that back. He says, I sat back and listened to Orland of Old Town play the harp and sing of dead kings beneath the sea. What are some other people's ideas on this? Dead Kings Beneath the Sea. Some people are like, does that mean Brandon the Shipwright? Doom of Illyria. They weren't kings. They weren't a kingdom. Are we talking about Ironborn? Why would he be singing about Ironborn? I'm surprised how few people actually have like talked about what Dead Kings Beneath the Sea kind of means. I mean, it seems a little weird to be talking. I mean, I understand that like it might relate to Stefan, but like seems like a weird thing maybe. But his dad, his dad was never a king, but it does remind us of Patchface. I don't know. It's funny that I like Googled that and I was like, how few. I was expecting like fans to be like, what does that mean? Dead Kings Beneath the Sea, like other than Brandon the Shipwright, like what does it mean? Huh. Interesting. I have to think about that. What was he talking about Stefan, or was he talking about because Orland, I'm trying to think of do we learn anything about what Orland says in the original? Let me see here. No, is that it?
Daniel says here, I only bring it up because Robert's dad did actually drown to death. Yeah. I don't think Robert's singer was singing of dead kings. I think it's another clue Mance wasn't at the feast.
So one of the things, okay, hold on a second. There's actually something significant here on where Ormond is seated. The Great Wall of Winterfell was hazy with smoke and heavy with the smell of roasted meat and fresh baked bread. Its gray stone walls were draped with banners, white, gold, crimson, the direwolf of Stark, Baratheon crowned stag. A singer was playing the high harp and reciting a ballad, but down at the end of the hall, his voice could scarcely be heard above the roar of the fire. Mance is going to be at the end of the, right? Because he says he's sitting with the, he says he's sitting at the back, right? Yeah, I think I might have my mind changed here. That there's just too many inconsistencies. Because he says that I sat in the back of the hall on a bench with the other free riders listening to Orland of Oldtown play the high harp and sing of Dead Kings Beneath the Sea. But Jon specifically says that he can't hear him. And he's at the back of the hall too. Yeah, that's so specific that I think we're supposed to think that Mance is lying at this point and that Jon misses it, that Mance never went. I think my mind's been changed. Mance never made it. And I think George purposely put in that Mance didn't make it.
So how to get the information then?
That's a fucking good question. I have to think about that. Who's his spy?
Benjen. Who else would be at the feast that would have access to Mance?
It could also be anybody that was like riding up the King's Road with information about. He might have a mole in King's Landing who's like, oh, who's going with them? Well, Orland, and they're taking a wheelhouse, and JB and Tyrion are going. Like he might have he could have a spy all the way down in King's Landing.
True, very true.
So it could be anything. But like the information is somewhat general, but like the most specific thing is Orland. But he fucks up two big things. He fucks up Orland and says, oh, I was listening to his song, when you didn't fucking listen to his song. You couldn't hear a thing. And then he fucks up the direwolf pups. That's two things wrong that if you reread that chapter, you know, if you like from George's perspective, let's say he wants to write that paragraph and he's going back to find Orland's, well, actually the name Orland he made up there, but nonetheless, he needs to like remember that there was a singer there. He would go back and check that chapter, and then he would see that fact and fucked it up on purpose.
Now all we need to know is who the mole is that would stand
who's
to gain
Mance's
from
mole.
Mance. Yeah,
it's a fucking theory video right there, man.
Varys?
Sorry,
Varys would stand to gain more than Littlefinger.
Yeah, Littlefinger though seems to be on the same. Littlefinger, I mean, we don't know what Littlefinger wants, but Varys just wants. I mean, I guess they both would, because they're both trying to destabilize the kingdom. Yeah. Spoil the end of the fanfic. The quality is great, but you're taking too long to drop characters and clearly not going to live long enough to complete it. By the way, that's not a threat. It's an age joke. Well, thank you, Aegon Knight.
No, don't actually do it. What are you, crazy? Don't spoil the fanfic.
In the end, the others are going to marry Tyrion.
Actually, answer one thing for me. Do we have plans for Benjen to come back in Winds or Dream?
I think it's going to be in Winds. It's definitely going to be. Yeah.
I swear to fucking God, if he comes back in an Ariel Hotha chapter, Preston, swear to fucking God.
Oh my God. No. There's definitely some characters that I need, like Stone Snake and Benjen are definitely coming back. But I haven't figured out how, you know, same with Alistair Thorne and stuff like that, but I don't know how to bring him back yet. So I'll have to figure it out. I'm sure people will send me some good ideas. What's the best way to have Benjen come back? That's like, surprising, but not too crazy, you know, I don't know. I could save a bunch of time saying Uncle Ben instead of Benjen. It's true. He's called Uncle Ben in the text. Found more creepy things in kids' cartoons since. So I have this article on Cracked. They're the original and then the sequel. But those two, like the first one was probably easier, but like scraping the barrel to try to find things for the second one's pretty tough. But for cartoons secretly set in nightmarish universes, so it's very difficult. The cracked article writing style back in the day, it was, you had to have something that was surprising. Everything happened to be surprising, so it has to be presented one way and then twisted around. So you can't just have like a cartoon that was creepy to begin with, because then it's like, well, now you're just listing things. It had to be something that's presented one way, but then you flip it around and it's another way, right? Which is why like Doug is on there. Like this, Doug, you think it's like this story of this like kid in school, and it's actually something much worse and horrible, So it's Any thoughts on introducing new names in the fanfic? Yeah, most of the new names are I try not to introduce too many new characters, but usually I usually try to grab a name from George's other works if I'm gonna throw something in. But yeah, but it's don't get him started on Super Bowl 50. Man, now you're just getting me upset. Super Bowl fucking 50. Had a conversation with a political pundit who says that Trump is going to win. He's a Biden support. What are your thoughts? He also thinks Newsom might come in. No, Newsom's not coming in. No. I mean, everything is with Biden. There's
no
nothing's
offense to
change.
Griffin, but your boy is. I hope your boy is wrong, but
yeah.
No.
I mean, I hope he's wrong. Look. Obviously, I somewhat think that Biden is going to win. I'm very fearful he's not. I do genuinely think that if Trump wins, it's the end of America. Not in the sense that Trump himself would destroy America, though he very well might. But it's such a signal that Trumpish attitudes and MAGA is a legitimate way of thinking that some other asshole would come after Trump. Like, even with Trump losing, like in 2020, he still, like, the MAGA movement still somehow like survived until now, even though they fucking lost the midterms in 2018, lost the election in 2020, lost like stuff in 2022. Like, even though Trump is losing, it still has this attitude that the MAGA movement is still around, Yeah, MAGA people, you know what? Downvote me and get the fuck off my channel. Because if you're fucking for Trump, get the fuck off my channel. Okay? I don't want you fucking as fans. I don't want to see you around if you're fucking for the MAGA movement. Okay? You're a bunch of fucking racists who want the fucking country to die. Just fucking leave. That's what I'm telling any MAGA person watching me. Don't fucking watch me. So the country's fucking over if the MAGA movement like continues. If they get some like revitalization of a victory here, like these are people that don't respect democracy. They don't respect governance. Like you see fucking like the Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene like types, like you see it. Like where is that going? Like where is that going for America? Where is like banning abortion and banning birth control? Like where is that going in America? Like when he talks openly about creating like camps for undocumented workers, like where is that going? What kind of talk? Like where does that lead? Like I said, like I never thought Trump was the problem. I thought Trump supporters were the problem. So I do think Biden's going to win. And the positive things about Biden, I mean, I understand that polls aren't great for Biden, but polls also have been seriously wrong in the past, like for the past fucking decade. And Democrats have overperformed in every election since, especially when abortion's been on the ballot, and abortion is on the ballot. Like when it really comes down to it, human beings do care about issues, and women care about issues, and women care about abortion. And so in that sense, it's really hard for me to believe that they're not, like, women are not going to come out and vote on this issue, that suddenly they're going to forget that like, Trump is like, banned abortion and like is trying to take away like birth control. Like, I just can't believe it. It's like these are real issues. So like once you step back and go the horse race politics of like of how people feel about the economy and, you know, that kind of general stuff like goes away. Like once you kind of like step back from these like feelings, oh, but the polls, well, what are polls? Oh, but the feelings, when I interview people, they feel like the country is going in the wrong direction. What is that? None of these things are very, like, you can't really grasp onto them as very real. And do these effervescent, mysterious things really drive people to the polls as much as I have a clear issue, and this issue is what I vote on. Like old people go to the polls all the time because they care about Social Security. That's their one fucking issue, and you never piss them off because it's a real issue. Social Security is a real fucking issue that affects their lives. Abortion is a real fucking issue that affects people's lives, and you'd think that they'd fucking vote over that. So that's the thing that makes me think Biden's going to win.
There's another thing I can give you right now that'll give you Biden win hope. Are you familiar with Alan Lichtman?
No, I'm sorry.
Alan Lichtman is a history professor who has a formula that he developed where he has these 13 keys to the White House that he uses to make his call. And he has predicted almost every single election correctly for the last 20 years. Yeah. He would have predicted the one in 2000 correctly had the whole bullshit with Gore in Florida not happened. But he was also one of the few people who predicted that Trump would have won in 2016. So basically, the way it works is they develop these keys based on their analysis of trends in presidential campaigns since 1860. The 13 keys are simple to use. If 8 or more of the keys are true for the incumbent party, its candidate will win the election. But if fewer than 8 are true, the challenger will win. According to Alan Lichtman, as of right now, Biden is tracking to win 2024. I'm going to quote him here. Apparently, Biden has already gotten 2 keys under his belt, the incumbency key and the contest key, after he faced no serious contenders. That's 2 keys off the top. That means 6 more keys would have to fall to predict his defeat. A lot would have to go wrong for Biden to lose. Right. The only thing I can see that would break him is if he dies. Other than that, because Kamala is widely unpopular. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, either candidate could die, but people might still vote for Kamala. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like I say, there's a lot of uncertainty with this. Like, you know, I think Biden's going to win, but there's some uncertainty. But yeah, no, like, is it the end of America? Absolutely. It's the end of America. Like, what does America mean to people? You know, you say like, okay, well, respect for democracy. Like, is America about democracy? Is that one of the fundamental aspects of what America is? The MAGA party doesn't respect democracy. Like, it doesn't. They literally tried to overthrow the government. Like, they're un-American party, like on a fundamental level. And then you say, okay, well, what are some other things that like define America? Well, we kind of think of America as like a melting pot that takes in people from all over. We think of like the pluralism and things like that. And well, MAGA's against that. You know, they're against, you know, immigration and minorities and the pluralistic like culture, right? Well, America's about freedom. Well, they're not really into freedom either, all right? Because they want to ban abortion and ban birth control. Well, they're for secular. America's about secular governance. Oh no, they're not. They want to have a religious state. They want to have a Christian state. You know, like everything where I think about like what America is about on a fundamental level, MAGA's against it, and it's like how I define America. Like MAGA's against it. Like everything I think is good about America, MAGA's against that. You know, like, oh, what about opportunity for where any average guy can like, you know, make it? Well, they want to lower taxes on the super wealthy and take away social programs that actually like help people out. So like help people rise. So they're against that too. Like they're against every aspect of what it is to be American. They are the most un-American party. But so, yeah, no, it's MAGA. And I'm not saying like end of America, like immediately in 2 years, But I'm saying like it would be such a atrocious blow to America that I don't think there's any recovering from it. I don't think our nation state can recover from an election of Trump. It would bring in more MAGA people, and it would just be the end of any function in government. You know, not to be, dire, but yeah, it's
Also, before you move on, we also got to throw some blame on the fucking media because, and
oh
I think
yeah.
I discussed this with you briefly a while ago, but I'll say it here. Like, Biden himself could pilot the X-Wing down the trench and destroy the Death Star. And the next day, the New York Times will have an article that says, Biden just saved the universe. Here's why that's bad for his campaign.
Oh yeah,
Like
absolutely.
the media, 110% is constantly against this fucking
Oh
guy.
yeah, because what gives
the
them
fuck?
clicks is anxiety, and what gives them clicks is the horse race.
And also,
So
Trump winning would also benefit them because of all the
oh,
anxious
until he
leftists.
rounds them all up and arrests them, which is what he claimed he was going to do.
I mean,
You know.
honestly, you know what? Them and then all the minorities who voted for Trump, I think should go second. Because we had this conversation a couple weeks back about how a lot of Muslims wanted to protest vote
Yeah,
Biden because of the Gaza thing.
yeah.
That's fine. But when Trump and his people make this an ethno-Christian state, you guys should be the first ones rounded up and deported.
Right. And again, to the person that just downvoted me and these 9 people, leave my fucking channel and never come back. Okay, please. Like, I don't want you fucking around. Like, leave. I do not want MAGA heads in here. I don't care about you. Like, you will never convince me to be for your fucking like horrible racist like orangutan. Like, just like, please, you too, whoever just downvoted me, please go. Do stop watching me. I hate you. Okay. Bye. Is it still a literary genius if Tyrek is a horse?
I feel so bad for Glidus that this joke is just like constantly destroyed. He made a great joke and an observation with that, and it's just like constantly destroyed.
Yeah, it's a funny joke, but there will be a time where it's now going to get old. I'm sure to Glidus, it's already not funny. Like, I'm sure to Glidus, it's like, oh my God, like, this is just like so much. Like, they're making this joke every day to me forever, So
someone typed, that is so true. Someone typed, 2 million people lived on the Death Star. They would call him Genocide Joe. It's true. That's true.
Yeah. Funny. I hope you're right. I'm concerned about democracy. If you had all the money in the world to try and fix one problem in the world, what would it be? I mean, I think it would probably be global warming, something like that. That's the thing I would focus on. I mean, that's the thing that's like hurting everything all at once, right? Everything all at once. Everything everywhere all at once. I mean, I think that's the thing that needs to be focused on, I suppose. Climate change, and we're all not really doing very much about it, and we need to. But that's another thing. MAGA doesn't believe it exists. So great. We can all fucking die. So Varys is trying to stabilize 7Ks up until he realizes Tyrion, etc. He's buying as much time for Aegon as he can before switching to destabilization. Oh yeah. Varys is trying to stabilize the Seven Kingdoms up until he realizes Tyrion, and then he's buying as much time for Aegon. Yeah. There's some going through and trying to make sense of Varys's actions can be complicated because he does seem to be waiting for various moments and then he clearly says in A Game of Thrones to Illyrio that, oh God, like things are falling apart. Hurry up. But then, there's still some weirdness. I want to say it's tough because we've got to like pin down what is Varys' doings and things like that. Because he really goes. I mean, obviously he goes all in at the end of A Dance with Dragons because Aegon has landed. So okay, it's time to go crazy. But I'm trying to think like not calling out, like when he didn't call out Littlefinger in A Game of Thrones, when Littlefinger was like, "Oh, that's my dagger," and he kind of sits back and is like, "What's your game here?" Like he could have been like, that dagger is clearly not yours, Littlefinger, you're lying, and have the guy arrested and problem solved, but he still kind of let stuff go. I mean, granted, he didn't want to, it was risky whatever he was doing, or like lying to Ned about to make him paranoid about the Lannisters. Like he was definitely doing actions towards war, like all the paranoia that he's feeding Ned. Like he could have waited to do that paranoia, a few years down the line. So some people wonder if like maybe Varys and Illyrio aren't on the same page, but it's hard to know. It's hard to know like what Varys thinks at this point. How fast is Aegon coming and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know if it's super, did George even know what was going on? Trump is Craster. He certainly likes his daughters. I don't like the two-party thing. I mean, it's what we got. I don't like it either. We probably do better with the parliamentary system. It's true. Yeah, if Biden would start reminding people that he's pro-women, pro-Social Security, it would take me. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want Biden to he's got a strong hand. He's got an incredibly strong hand. Like he got us through COVID. He curbed inflation. He canceled student debt. He got an infrastructure plan through. He's been supporting Ukraine. He's pro-choice. He's like everything. He believes climate change is real. Like there's so many. He's for strengthening NATO.
But Preston, the price of a Big Mac has gone up. Stop it. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like everything Biden, he's done so much that's been well, but in a sense, he needs to market himself better. Like everyone should know this. Everyone should just be like, well, of course. Like it should be instantaneous. Like, of course Biden is fucking better. Like everyone should know fucking Biden is better. Like what kind of idiot wouldn't know Biden is better? Like, I don't like, why would anyone be against the banning of contraceptives in America? Like, why would anybody be against like abortions? Like, don't people realize that like sex is fun? Don't you want to have sex? Like, just read John 1. Orland of Old Town never mentioned in Game of Thrones. Mance lied that Orland was the singer at Winterfell. John only knew a singer was there. That is true. It doesn't mention Orland. It just says a singer. So you're right that Mance could have made up the name, but because he said the name, he was like, oh, I guess he was there. He sounds like an expert. It might be a clever thing, but he does fuck up and say like, oh, he was listening to the singer when he couldn't hear the singer. Yeah. But MAGA ultimately wants a white Christian national state. That is true. I
always find it funny when like non-white people vote for Trump. Like, you really think you're one of the good ones? You wouldn't be.
Melting pot is very recent, as is abortion, and most of what you said. Well, I mean, is being recent somehow not American? I mean, like, if you lived in 1900, would you consider having America be free of slavery an American thing, even though slavery was recently banned. You know, like just because something's recent and new doesn't mean it's not very much American, you know? I mean, Taylor Swift is fucking American as it comes. She's pretty new. You know, like this is the thing is like, just because something is old doesn't mean it's more American. Like slavery is super old. Is slavery American? You know, like a lot of things that are gone. Like stagecoaches American or sports cars? You know, like which would you think is more American? So just because something is old doesn't mean it's American, you know? And when I say something like, women having reproductive rights, I think of that as a pretty fucking American thing. And they're trying to take it, you know, but I think America is about progress. That's what the whole thing about being a progressive is. I feel like society should progress rather than going back. I'm not looking to make like something again, like great again, going to the past. Because MAGA sees the past as the better time rather than the future. I am for societal progress, things getting better. Super Chat is on fire. Yeah. Thank you, Dunk Donk. Don't mess with Preston. He's got reach on you. That's true. That's true. MAGA or extremists, that on either end is never a good thing. It's true though. The people on the far left don't have any power. So I mean, other than being like woke scolds on Twitter, they don't really have much power. So. Like people talk about like, oh, this world, like there's so many extremists. There's like the fascist MAGA types, but then there's these communists. But then you're like, okay, do we have a single communist member of Congress? No, you know. So like the left extremists like have literally no say and no power in government. You know, while on the right, like there's some fucking loons who are in power right now. In fact, a few of them are on the Supreme Court, you know, so. I don't really understand this one. Fixing climate change with 50% tariffs on Chinese solar panels and 100% on EVs. I don't understand that. Yeah, one of Trump's reps met with Arab Michigan leaders that said, we'll vote for Trump if he does this for Palestine. And Trump reps made a joke about turning Gaza into beachfront property. Yeah, it's funny. People bring up like, oh, Biden hasn't been great for the Palestinians, but it's like Trump would be a million times worse. So I don't know even like how they would like logically ever vote for Trump or, you know. The dollar menu was behind 9/11. The Supersize Me guy died of cancer. You hear about that, Carmine?
I actually had to read his book for like a class in college.
Oh, really?
Apparently it was all bullshit. He was an alcoholic, so he wasn't healthy to begin with.
Yeah, no, he was an alcoholic. He had some serious issues and stuff like that. And then he, I mean, he never really did anything like big after Supersize Me, but
Homie, you wrapping up? I know it's like 12 for you.
Oh yeah, I guess pretty soon. Yeah, I was just getting to the end here. Do you hate the Libertarian Party? Here's the thing. I do hate the American Libertarian Party because I think the American Libertarian Party is a bunch of hypocrites. Okay. the fact that they could have for speaker RFK and Trump, who are the furthest thing from libertarians, speak makes me think that like whoever's organizing this party is ridiculous. Now, I'm against libertarian ideals. I think libertarian ideals are completely wrong. But when I run into consistent libertarians, and they're few, but sometimes I run into them, like these libertarians that are like, yes, I'm like the government shouldn't be regulating abortion, and the government shouldn't be regulating guns. And it's like, well, at least you're consistent versus like I'm libertarian on selective issues, kind of like hypocrisy that you run into with most libertarians. When I run into a consistent libertarian who like, I'm at least not that angry at him because he's at least like has a consistent philosophy, but I don't believe in libertarian philosophies at all. The Libertarian Party of America is a bunch of fucking hypocrites. Like, how can you possibly have like Trump and RFK Jr. like speak at your convention? Like, what the fuck is like that's meaningless. Like, how is that libertarian at all? It doesn't make any sense. So, libertarianism is a good thing socially, but an awful thing economically. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing socially either. I understand that, people are for like, when I understand what you're saying, like you're saying like government, get out of my life, get out of my bedroom and things like this. But there's plenty of things that you would want, the government interfering with. For instance, banning child brides. Okay. That's something that's social, that I think all of us can agree that like allowing 10-year-olds to marry adults is wrong. Right. So that would be something that's like socially, like something where we're very happy that government will come in and stop that sort of thing. And so when I say like, going like, yeah, I have, of course, lots of issues that I think government should get their hands out of people. I think of like birth control and abortion. Like I want government gone. Meanwhile, like I would like government to have more regulations on assault weapons and things like this. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but when you actually examine like some of the things that that would happen if libertarians took over, you'd probably be like, oops, I didn't mean that. Oh, wait. Oh yeah, that too. Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot. Like that. And that's the thing with libertarians is like when you talk to them and you go, when you talk about one specific issue with a libertarian, let's say you bring up like housing deeds, you're like, okay, all right, libertarian, you're against like consolidation of power and don't like the government have too much power. Who should issue like deeds for houses? And at first they're like, well, maybe there could be like many different agencies that could issue deeds for houses. And then you'd be like, but how would you know who owned your house if there's like many different places that can issue deeds? And then they kind of go, okay, fine. For issuing deeds for houses, the government can do that. And you go, okay, great. And then you move on to issue number 2 and you run into the same fucking thing. You're like, well, wait a minute. What happens when businesses start like dumping toxic sludge in the river? And then the libertarian goes, okay. I guess if a business is dumping toxic sludge in the river, maybe the government can go in and do that. But the thing is, once you start talking about every single thing the government does, you find that the government is actually really useful. Like, whoa, oh, really? Oh, yeah, no, okay. And so that's the thing. I think it's true both economically and socially. You actually said libertarian. Yeah. So it's just, that's what I kind of think. Any chance Mance lies get into the fanfic? I think now. I think it's interesting. I think uh, I'm definitely going to be thinking that issue over. I mean, a lot of it. I'm thinking about Mance a lot because I think about like who sent the Catspaw kind of issue. But you know, I think it might be an interesting thing. Like he never went to Winterfell. Mexico is the best Latin American country. Don't people think Uruguay? Isn't Uruguay the best Latin American country? I mean, come on. I mean, let's be honest. Who's got like the best functioning government in Latin America? Lowest, low crime, good social programs, Yeah, that's fair. Government has no business in what substance I put in my body as long as it doesn't hurt me. Yeah, I agree. I'm for drug legalization. Have you seen the latest Dragon's Demands video about George R. R. Martin's most recent blog post? He seems to think Winds is coming at the end of the year based on the blog post. Dragon Demands is an optimist. He is a great optimist, and but I don't buy it. I just do not think Winds of Winter is coming at the end of the year. I guess we'll find out within the next few months. But obviously, I'd love to be wrong, but I just don't. I don't see it anyway. I have this conversation with Carmine every month. But I just don't see it. I just don't see it. At least with A Dance with Dragons, he was posting like when he's in good moods, when he's writing well, he makes posts about how he's writing well. But Gilly as the Catspaw. Wouldn't that be incredible if Gilly was the Catspaw? Okay. You ever listen to Cumtown? Carmine and I used to listen to Cumtown. Cumtown was kind of
I actually only listen to a couple segments. They have some really awesome segments. Like I highly recommend the Cumtown segment. You can look it up online. When they talk about Steven Seagal movies, that is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean they are kind of hit and miss, right? Because they were on for a while. So like the highlight clips are fucking incredible. Like there's some things I haven't laughed like so hard except on that, I'm
going to recommend this to the audience right now. It's 13 minutes. It's well worth your listen if you ever have seen any Steven Seagal, even if you're not a Steven Seagal fan. It's if you go on YouTube right now and type in Cumtown, Cumtown, Steven Seagal. It's a video with 8.3 million views by Clangers TV, and it's them talking about how Steven Seagal. I never realized this in all of his most recent films. Steven Seagal always plays like a special forces guy who is just, for some reason, always sitting down. He just does not want to go. He does. I never realized that, or how they always have to write in a sex scene with him in an incredibly beautiful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny because it's always like freeze, and then he has his hands up like this. He's like, okay. And you're like, dude, you're clearly coming at me with your hands. No one would stop when your hands are this low. No one's going to take that. Like when somebody says freeze, your hands better be up, not like, like taking the guns. How many chapters will the Winds fanfic be? I've thought about this. I think it's probably going to be around 65 chapters. My chapters have been somewhat on the long. The Winds chapters, the fanfic chapters, have been somewhat on the long side. So I mean, just getting to the point where it's going to be 400,000, 410,000 words around there. That'll probably translate to something like 65 chapters. So hopefully that'll be enough to, but But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We're on our road. We're on our road to the halfway point. On the road to the halfway point. That's the next like year and a half. Get us to halfway. Get us to halfway. You know. So, Carmine, thank you for staying with me tonight.
Of course. And before we log off, I want to remind the audience real quick, for any leftists watching who's nervous, definitely check out Alan Rickman. Seriously, check out Alan Rickman.
Makes it make you feel better, yeah. But anyway, but most importantly, you know, you gotta get out and vote. Convince all your friends to vote for Biden, and you know, keep America alive. Keep America breathing. For doing a part 1, part 2 book frameworks. I don't know. I think I just talk about like the road to halfway because I like thinking about benchmarks, you know, like we're kind of at the a third that way through. And so we can get to work on getting to halfway, feel good about our progress. All right. So, I will talk to you guys soon, man. All right. Thanks everyone. I'll see you guys next time.